another unknown or unpredictable. We as commentators commentate on it. It's like when we went to Saudi and people were saying you shouldn't go to Saudi Arabia. Went to Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia was the event putting on the show. I've been to Saudi many times in the last few years, and I think there's huge change going on in Saudi, and that's really good to see. So I think it's always best to stay out of the sort of areas of, what should happen like that with the drugs, whatever. I'm a commentator, I'm a broadcaster. It's not my job to decide that. I have an opinion, and my opinion is there should be no drugs in sport, full stop, in sport, but particularly boxing, because boxing is so dangerous. So no, I'd like to see drugs being eradicated, but if a fighter is found guilty, they should be putting their hands up at least to say, hey, we're going to get to the bottom of what happened and take their punishment that is administered. And the punishment, the problem is, varies from fight to fight and year to year and governing body to governing body. So maybe there is a place in the future in boxing where there is one, sort of universal governance that says this is what has to happen at British level, at European level, at world level, or maybe it has to happen at every level. But it's a lot of money. There's a huge expense in the process of VADA testing and stuff. So that's another area of difficulty.
Yes. You've mentioned a few people's names in there, like David Adelaide, who just won this weekend. What do you think about his performance? Yes, the referee did shout out sort of break, and then there was a hit. But regardless of that, he did know how to finish that shot. He looked really powerful. And I feel that, well, you'll probably tell us more so, there's a new era of heavyweight boxers coming through now. I was just looking it up. He's 6'4"? So he's up there, because I've always seen like Mike Tyson era sort of thing. Like you had smaller heavyweights, whereas then you got to the, Tyson Fury 6'9", Joshua 6'7", 6'8" sort of thing. So he's in and around there. Do you feel that, David has a chance to fight among the top level?
Look, heavyweights have changed over the years. I was reading an old program with Cassius Clay and Henry Cooper from the 1960s the other day, and I think Clay, that's what he was, Ollie, at the time, was 13 stone something, and you're now looking at heavyweights weighing in at 17, 18, 19 stone, and I think Lennox Lewis was a huge heavyweight. The Klitschko's to the modern era of the sort of super heavyweight, really, because that's what they fought in the amateurs, AJ and Fury, and you look at Delicious Ore turning pro the other night, 6'6", some of these guys. And I think Joe Joyce and Filip Hrgović both around 6'5", 6'6". So these are big, big men. David Adelaide, TKV, about 6'4", I think. What did I think the other night? Look, as I said, he won the fight. The referee let it go on. He's the British heavyweight champion. Should there be a rematch? Potentially. Ben Davison and Barry Smith were going mad. They came around to our screens. The referee definitely called break. I think he called break a couple of times. But then there was earlier in the fight where TKV may have hit David after a break. So these things can happen in boxing. Matt Macklin was showing me on his way home, because he had Corey O'Regan, and he said that when Jack Rafferty hit him, the referee had his hand in there. So look, there are things that happen in there, and referees sometimes get it absolutely spot on, and sometimes it's tough being a referee too, when to call that time, and especially with heavyweights where one punch can change things and they've got to get in there. So it's a hard job being a ref. I think maybe a rematch is the fair outcome. I think TKV was boxing really well. I don't think David had a great night until that point. I spoke to Adam and Booth and David afterwards, and he didn't really let his hands go. Unfortunately, he did at that time, and he won by knockout. So I think he's got power. I think he's got a place at that, within that heavyweight table. He's the British champion now, so he'll have to show us a lot more to move into that world elite. He lost to Fabio Wardley, so but he's certainly one of the guys out there. But I think we'll see TKV come back because of that, and there's a huge amount coming through. But the guy I'm really hot on is Moses Italma. I think he's the future of the heavyweight division. I think he's a very, very talented fighter. He hits really hard. He's got beautiful feet. His timing are good. He's incredibly dedicated. And I think the most important thing about Moses is you talk to the likes of AJ, Fury, Lawrence Okoli, everyone that he's been in with, sparring with since he was a young kid. nobody says anything bad about Moses Atauma. Quite the opposite. They say he is absolutely lightning. And I know Moses quite well, and he wants to go and spend time with Alexander in his camp and learn from Usyk too. I love what I see with Moses. So yeah, there's a great deal of heavyweight talent coming through. Ajit Kabayel's a guy that people aren't really talking about, but he keeps on upsetting the odds. He keeps on putting terrific performances on. So he's right up there for a challenge soon. So Daniel Dubois, of course, is still late 20s. So there's a lot of young lions around, and the heavyweight division is going to be mixed up for the next couple of years after Alexander Usyk retires. But still, Usyk is the man to beat at the moment.
Yeah. We've got to talk about where we're talking about Easter coming up, the egg. Obviously, I get it. I understand it. People who weren't talking about boxing are talking about boxing now because of the egg. Obviously, when Eubanks slapped Conor Benn with the egg on the face, it's all over the papers. Everybody's asking me for fight predictions who weren't even following boxing. So I get the stunt behind, and I think like Eubank is a very intelligent young man, especially just like his father. He's just alone on this side, and then you've got a whole row of articulate, you've got the Eddie Hearns, you've got Nigel Benn, who's been through it all, the Dark Destroyer, you've got Conor Benn sitting there, where I don't think he's much of a talker. He'll say a little bit here and there, but the way Eubank has articulated himself and conducted himself and tried to stage it alone without even his father in the background, but then also getting fined, I think it was about 100,000 for that stunt. First of all, I just want, your opinion around the whole sort of situation of the fight. And then second of all is, what do you think of this? We talked about things, not being correct, VADA testing as much, etc. But when a piece of egg hits somebody's face, is it really something that should be made an example of £100,000?
There's a lot in that question. There's a lot to sort of dissect. I think the most important thing is, what do I think of the fight, which is Eubank and Benn? I love it. And I was there when Eubank and Benn's rivalry, the fathers were at it in the sort of late 80s and early 90s. Great times for boxing. Big fight nights and millions watching on terrestrial television, and a genuine rivalry of hatred. And I got to work with Nigel and Chris for the latter sort of few fights of their careers. And brilliant sort of characters as well as fighters. And they were really, really good fighters. I don't think either of their sons is quite as good as Chris Senior or Nigel, but they're very good. And it's a wonderful story, the sons of the legends. And of course, because of what happened with the failed drug test and all the stuff that Connor's had to go through to clear his name, and all the sort of the nightmare period he's had, and Junior as well, because he lost his beloved brother Sebastian. So the Eubank family had tragedy. Conor was trying to sort his own career and life out, and they've had a rough couple of years, the pair of them. So I'm really pleased to see this fight back on. There are people that don't like the fight. Frank Warren doesn't. Frank doesn't like the fight at all. Simon Jordan's not a fan. There's people I really respect in the business that don't like this fight, but I love it. I love a story. I love something that pulls you in. The hook, the tale. That's what's fascinating. It's almost like 80% in the build-up. You want to be invested in it because you want to get to see it and feel it. And I think Chris Eubank Jr., as you said, very intelligent. I think he's utterly premeditated what he did with the egg, and I think he's completely manipulated the press conferences and the build-up to the way he wants it to be. I thought he dealt with Eddie fantastically, and Eddie is the best speaker and showman, but the way he just sort of silenced him was terrific. It was very clever. Conor is a good talker, but he wasn't allowed to be, and he talks from the heart. They are polar opposites like their dads. They're both actually great characters, and they are really good talkers. Conor's fantastic when you let him go and hear him, and you can hear it's from here, whereas Chris Jr., it's more from maybe how he wants the production to play out, the event to go. How is he going to make the most money? How is he going to get the attention on him? How is he going to rile Conor Benn? How is he going to embarrass Eddie? All of these things, that's what he's thinking. And Adi Oladipo said it was probably 10-7 with the egg in favour of Eubank in Manchester, and at Spurs the second press conference was at 10-8. I actually preferred the second press conference. I thought it was more interesting with the 50,000 and the hands on the neck and all that. And I think the fight week build up will be amazing. What did I think of the egg? It's not right to put your hands on another fighter in that situation by the rules. And of course, the British board were always going to fine Chris, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was hysterical. I mean, Eddie at the beginning said he thought it was a glass. Obviously, if it had been anything harder than an egg, you couldn't have done it. But I think Chris knows what he's doing. He plotted it for a long time.